such short notice. And we'll treat this like our regular weekly press conferences. Coach will make an opening statement, and then we'll open it up to questions. And we have the microphones for those of you that haven't been here before. They don't amplify within the room, but we're recording this and we'll play it back on YouTube. So with that, I'll turn it over to Coach Johnson.
Okay. Well, the bottom line, I guess, is I felt like that we needed to go in a different direction. I think over the past 32 games or whatever, there's certainly been some high points and some low points, but the trend and I didn't see the improvement, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I'm not ready to give up. I'm ready to move forward. In my mind, it's a new 6-game season, and we'll move forward and see what we can do. But, nobody worked harder than Al. Nobody put in more time, and I certainly appreciate everything he did while he was here. So.
Questions, raise your hand.
I guess kind of when did you make the decision in your mind? Is this something you've been thinking about for a few games now? In the bye week was your opportunity to do it, or did you make the decision in the last 48, 24 hours?
I actually made the decision this morning after taking some time and watching the game tape and going over it. And, what we had, there's no question that Al knows defense, and I think he's very knowledgeable. But the communication part wasn't transcending to the field. And, there was a lot of errors, a lot of having a hard time getting lined up, a lot of those type issues that, kept repeating themselves. And so it's like I said a couple weeks ago, I don't think the man forgot everything he knows about defense. I just don't think in this situation it was transcending. The communication wasn't working. What he knew we weren't getting on the field.
You have somebody in mind that'll run those meetings, that'll be kind of the coordinator, interim coordinator, or will it just be by committee? Or how
No, it won't be by committee. I've kind of reassigned our coaching staff, and I'm going to be more involved in it. And but right now, probably Charles Kelly will run the meeting, and we're going to switch around a little bit. Andy McCollum is going to coach the inside linebackers. Dave Wilkowski will coach the defensive line, and Joe Speed will coach the outside linebackers. So that's kind of the way we'll do it. We're fortunate we've got 3 guys over on that side of the ball that have all been defensive coordinators at one time or another. Actually, Joe also was at the prep school, so there's actually been 4 of them, really.
Could you describe what your role will be going forward with the defense?
Well, I think to set some parameters and some the framework of exactly kind of what we want to do, and depending on how it goes is how much I'll be involved. As I've said before, I've always tried to, when you hire somebody to do a job, you give them some leeway and you let them do the job. That's the way that when I was an offensive coordinator, that's the way I wanted it to be done. Let me do my thing, and if the results aren't what you're looking for, then I'm accountable. And so that's kind of what we've done. I mean, he's had leeway to do what he wanted to do. And so with moving forward, all these guys will have input. Like I said, they've all been coordinators. What I want to do is something that we can take from the practice field and the meeting room to the game field. I think at a risk of repeating it over and over, you've heard me say a lot, simplicity sometimes is the best thing that you can do. And, certainly we want to be multiple enough that we can play, but we want to be sound. And I don't want to come in on Monday and have 40 missed assignments. I mean, it's not going to do you any good.
Will you still play 3-4?
Well, we're not going to totally change what we do. There's going to be some things that will probably change. We probably won't be two gapping as much. But we'd gotten away from some of that anyway,
Well, so much of the personality and the identity of this team is based on the offense. What is your vision for what the personality of a defense should be with this team? And is it difficult establishing that in a when, like I said, so much is tied up in the offense as far as personality wise?
Right. Well, I don't think so. I mean, I look back to my first year here in 2008, and we probably won 2 or 3 games defensively. I mean, I know for a fact my second game here, I think, was at Boston College, and defensively we turned the ball over about 4 or 5 times and hung around and won the game. And those guys certainly kept it in. What I'm looking for is balanced. I mean, I think you have to have contributions from every aspect. I don't know that our team has to have an offensive identity. I think that's just kind of happened because of the results. But, certainly, as a head coach, you want to be good on defense, you want to be good in special teams, you want to be good in offense. You want to have all 3 factors a part of it.
Coach, obviously the way kind of games have gone this season, really pretty much every game, if you get a stop here or there, it probably changes the momentum. How much of this was about keeping, I guess, the players in it and the coaches and everyone, given how many bad breaks you guys have had in opportunity, not being able to make those stops?
Well, I wouldn't break it down into just making stops. It's like I said after the game, we've all got to do a better job. I mean, we got to do a better job offensively, and we've got to do a better job in special teams, and clearly we got to play better defensively. But I'm not all our problems aren't just defensively, but we did have some problems there and some issues, and it was inevitable that it, or at least to me, that it wasn't getting better. So, as my job to kind of change it, and as like I said, I'm looking forward to the second half, and I'm not going to give up on this season. It's not fair to these kids or to anybody else. So, looking forward to playing the next half of the season, see what happens.
I imagine with a decision like this, particularly at this point of the year, you're taking risks both ways. Is that how you looked at it? I mean, you decide to keep them, you have risks, and but on the flip side also.
Well, you have to weigh out the thought process and decide what you feel like gives you the best chance moving forward. And, this wasn't based on 1 game or 2 games or whatever. It's based on a body of work. And, clearly we've got to be better in all the facets, but, we've been ahead in some games near the end, and we haven't seemed to win any of them. And you can say, well, you got to score more, and we do. You got to make a play in special teams, but we've also got to play better there.
Coach, what do you think, or rather, do you think the lack of energy that is shown as the season has progressed has been part of the problem, or was rather that was a function of the coaching?
Well, I think the one game that we really had a lack of energy, was Middle Tennessee. I don't think we had a lack of energy in the Miami game, and I don't think we had a lack of energy Saturday. I think that the effort was good when I watched the tape, and guys were playing hard and flying around. We just got to help them more.
I guess, is this somewhat of an audition for these coaches now without Coach Groh? I mean, if they perform well, would you consider retaining any of the defensive coaches now?
Well, certainly. I mean, to me, like I said, the season's not over, and it's a chance to move forward and see, how we can do. I think that we can play better than we've played. So we'll see.
At least through the Virginia game, at least from a statistical standpoint, it seemed like the defense was improving. Was that your impression at all, or did you still feel like there were underlying issues?
Well, I think that we had some issues from a ways back. I mean, I go back to the last games last year in the bowl game, and the Virginia Tech game was eerily similar to the bowl game, and the Miami game was eerily similar to that. And it's like, so you know, you have to kind of take all that into consideration. And it's like I said, you can do a lot of things. I mean, we could have scored more in the bowl game, or we could have scored more, you know. We played really well at Virginia Tech for 3 quarters. I think what's lost is they scored 3 of the last 4 times they had the ball, and they missed a field goal the other time. So it was, you know, it wasn't just one drive or one whatever. And I mean, clearly we didn't play as well offensively up there as we would have liked. But it's not a pattern. It's not happened every week, you know.
Have you ever made a staff change in the middle of the season?
Probably not in the middle. I've made them at the beginning of the season, and we just kind of, nobody knew it. We just kind of rode out. We changed the responsibilities, and I think that to me, it was inevitable, and I didn't want to give up the rest of this season. I still think we can come back and have a good season. So that's why I did it now.
I guess, what was the player reaction when you told the team, and kind of how did you go about telling them?
Well, we had a team meeting, and we just told them. I mean, you hit it head on, and you just said, hey, we're going to make some changes, and this is what they are. And I'm sure that, you know, you have a mixed emotion. I'm sure a lot of the players are disappointed. I'm sure Coach Groh was very well liked. They also understand that we haven't played as well as we need, not just defensively, but all over. I keep repeating that, but it's, you know, they're fairly resilient. You'll know in a week or two what the reaction is, I guess.
I'm curious, the tackling is something you've mentioned multiple times. Is that something that can be improved by I mean, I know, I guess pursuit angles is part of it too, but is that something that can be improved by practicing differently or having a different?
Certainly, I hope it can. I hope that that's what practice does. It's not like we didn't tackle in practice, but the pace of practice is a little bit different than what it will be. You know, we play a little more live on offense than we did defensively, and I think you have to do some of that. You have to play. It's, you know, it's just a different philosophy or whatever. You know, these guys are students, and they come and they practice for 2 hours. You don't have them all day. They're not. It's a different type deal.
More live type action in practice.
Well, I think that we've got to have to me, defense is energy and playing fast and enthusiasm and all those things. And I think it's hard to get that if you don't go live some, you know. Oh, I don't know. I think, you know, I was hopeful that as we started this year, the 3rd year, I was hopeful that we'd see some improvement, and I was encouraged, you know, the first of the year, but it became apparent that it was short-lived, and you know, the last 3 games were more of a carryover of the last 6 games a year ago.
Again, a lot better on the internet and watch the replay?
We had a lot of the same recurring problems. We had a hard time getting off the field on third down. That was the case a year ago. We talked about it. We tried to make it an emphasis. We're 109th in the country in third down defense. There was some recurring themes that just we weren't getting better.
I don't know what degree you can address this, but have you handled this with the defensive recruits? And
Well, we haven't. I haven't talked to them today. I mean, I think that I don't think it'll be an issue. Possibly could, but right now I'm trying to think defensive recruits that are committed. I don't see it as being an issue. Maybe with a couple. I'll talk to them tonight, but that can't override the big picture. You know. I mean, you have to try to do what you feel like is best for the program moving forward.
Anybody else?
just from a personal standpoint, I'm sure when you made this hire, you were confident and hopeful. It
Right.
must be disappointing if that's right, where that didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing and frustrating, and nobody ever, you never want to have to do these things, and you never want to have to, but to me, that's part of being a leader. Sometimes you have to do hard things, and it's like, I have a great deal of respect for Al. He's in my mind, had a very good career and may still coach. I don't know what his future holds, but it just wasn't working here. That doesn't mean that it won't work the next place or whatever, but it just wasn't working right now.
Is this maybe then, like, for the players, obviously, you say you didn't like the tackling, you didn't like whatever, maybe wake them up like, hey, look, this is what's going on now. Now it's on you to try to perform better?
Well, I think it's a call to everybody. The coaches, the players, myself, everybody, that we need to do better, and that we're not giving up on the season. And the way we've played is not acceptable. It's just not. It's not why I came here. It's not acceptable.
Coach, I spent some time around the Air Force program before I came down here, and their defensive coaches always would voice their concerns about practicing against that offense and how it put them at a disadvantage. Coach Groh ever raised those concerns with you?
Not really. I know most of the Air Force defensive coaches. That surprises me because I talk to them a lot, and they're pretty good. I mean, I look at the experience at Georgia Southern. The 5 years I was there, we had top 10 defenses. I look at Navy; they've had some pretty good defenses.
Well, the question was specifically about Coach Groh, not that it's an issue.
I think that it's different. To me, playing defense is playing defense. If you're a three technique, you line up across from the offensive guard, and if he blocks down, you squeeze. If he pulls, you brace out, you look in. If he does those things, to me, that's the way you have to coach defense. Different people have different philosophies. We don't, contrary to popular opinion, we don't practice against ourselves all the time. We practice against scout teams. In the spring and the fall, the first starting offense plays off cards with scout teams. So the way I look at it, pass scale, 7-on-7, we got 4 receivers. We run the same routes in 7-on-7 that everybody you plays runs. It would be like me saying, well, gosh, we only practice against a 3-4, so if we play against teams that are 8-man front or 4-3, we're at a huge disadvantage. You practice against what you're going to play against, and or does Georgia struggle when they play spread teams because they're a pro set team? Or, I mean, everybody's going to have some of those issues.
You were a defensive coordinator at one point in your career, were you not?
I was a defensive coach. I was never had the coordinator title, but I've coached defense. And my take is that if you can coach offense, you better be able to coach defense. I know certainly what gives us trouble. But it's not so much to me right now about scheme and trying to out-scheme people as it is simplifying, getting lined up, flying to the ball, playing with great effort, playing hard, doing those things that give you a chance to be successful. Because I don't care what you're doing, if you're not doing those things, the best way not to lose is don't beat yourself. You got to get lined up, and you can play hard. If you do those things, you'll have a chance.
Paul, you'll have this will be your third, I guess, defensive coordinator or whatever the situation is now in your time, maybe a fourth by the time the season starts. How badly do you need some stability at that crucial position, and has that been a particular frustration that you haven't been able to latch on to that?
Well, we would have liked to have been more productive overall, but I think if you look, I mean, it's not been, we had one and 6 games later we had another one. I mean, the first guy was here for 2 full years. This guy was here for 2.5 years. You probably look at a lot of programs as pretty similar, maybe not for the same reasons, but it's probably fairly similar. If you look at our league, I'm trying to think, since I came into the league, the only team I can think of with the same defensive coordinator is Virginia Tech. There might be another one, but everybody else has changed, so I don't know that that's that unusual.
Coach, I know there's a myriad of problems, but is there one that sticks out in your mind that you hope to change with the installation of the new coordinators or system?
Well, I think that my big goal is to simplify and see if we can't get lined up and play faster and play harder, and certainly you hope the production will be better. That's just my philosophy. I don't think you got to trick people, or I think you line up and know what you're doing and play fast. And that's not every answer, and you can say, well, you got to have great players. I'm not sold that we don't have good players. I think I'm confident in our players' ability. So we'll see,
Coach, one thing I'd heard just talking to players and being around is that one thing that Coach Groh did, and I guess I've heard other coaches say this too, that he'll show different things each week. And when you talk about simplifying, is that part of what you're referring to?
Well, I think that the bottom line, no matter what you're doing, you've got to know what you're doing. And it doesn't matter if I know what we're doing if the guys who are doing it don't know. And I don't know that was the case all the time, but I think Al's a very smart man, and he's very multiple, and he understands, what's inside his head. He's very knowledgeable. There's no questioning that. The problem was becoming what's in there we weren't seeing on the field. It wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't transcending. I'm sure that his plans, well, I know. I mean, he had good plans. It wasn't that. It just wasn't transcending. So it's kind of like what I said. It's the same thing offensively or whatever. It's not what I know. It's what can we do, or what do the guys on the field know? How can they, I might be standing over there on the sideline and I might know every check or what we need to do, but it doesn't do any good if the guys who are playing don't know.
I guess making the change at this point in the year, does it make it easier if you do hire outside the program to maybe field some interest from people, because it gives them a lot of time to if there are people interested that
Well,
maybe you're not familiar
all,
with to
all
reach
that
out?
in due time. You know what I'm focused on right now? It's like I said earlier. I'm focused on beating Boston College and getting the second half of the year off to a good start. And you know, we started off last year 6-0. If we finish this back half 6-0, that's my goal. You know, but to do that, you got to win the first game. You got to beat Boston College. So that's my focus. There'll be plenty of time to worry about that and to evaluate that as the next 6 games play out.
Time for 2 more questions, please.
How will practice this week be different than it would have otherwise?
It won't be, other than maybe the periods and we'll sit down tomorrow. I'll sit down with the defensive staff, and we've already talked. They came to me actually, and you know, we break down practice by periods, and offensively I've always done it by groups. You know, where we go an option period, and then we go 7-on-7, and then we go inside runs, and then we go goal. You know, whatever, and you know, they've talked about trying to break theirs down the same way. While we're in option period, they do inside drill. While they're in whatever. But, you know, certainly they'll have some leeway with that. There's going to be some things that I want to make sure that we do, i.e. tackling, i.e. pursuit, some of those things that we haven't been as good at. So we'll sit down and work together with them, and we'll come up with a plan. And it's like I said, we're fortunate. We've got 4 guys over there. They've all been defensive coordinators. I talked to Charles today. We need to pull from – everybody needs to have some ownership. You know, I think there's more enthusiasm and everybody gets after it a little bit more when they feel like they're contributing a little bit more. And that's something that we'll do moving forward.
Given the fact that the guys that were on the staff were not necessarily Groh's people, like people he brought in, do you think that there was communication or trust issues or just some sort of breakdown at some level in terms of getting maybe the assistants to be able to help the team as much as they should?
I think there's a differing philosophies, okay? Coach Groh's background and his philosophy comes from that he kind of coaches them. He met with all of them. He coached them all. It's like, you know, so those guys weren't as involved as, say, on offense. My philosophy is I don't meet with everybody on offense. I mean, they meet with their positions and they're responsible for them. And if they can't get in what we're doing, then I got issues with them. You know, if the offensive line coach can't teach his guys what to do, because in my mind, you know, if I try to meet with everybody, I can't get into the details and into the weeds like I could if I only met with the quarterbacks. You know, I can get way more in depth with them or way more in depth with the receivers if I've just got the receivers in there, because they don't got to worry what the offensive line's looking at or doing. And it's just a differing philosophy. And moving forward, that's the philosophy we'll take over there. We'll break up, and those guys will be responsible for their groups.
Okay, thanks again for coming. Appreciate it. Let's let Coach Johnson hit work for Macon before 12 o'clock traffic.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.